for. For MAGA Republicans, Roe is just the beginning. They're going to try to ban the right to choose nationwide. They're coming for IVF and birth control next. We're up against extremism. Send me back to the White House and I'll fight like hell to restore Roe v. Wade and protect American freedom.
Now, in addition to the impact on abortion rights here in America, the temporary posting of the document on the Supreme Court's website also raises questions about why a second abortion-related case after Dobbs reached the public, inadvertently it seems, before the court officially released it, as well as what other decisions from the court that are done and ready are just sitting there. It's where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Senior editor for Slate, host of the Amicus podcast, Dahlia Lithwick, is here. Plus, the president of Reproductive Freedom for All, Mini Timuraju, is here. MSNBC legal analyst, NYU law professor Melissa Murray is back. And former Obama White House policy director, MSNBC medical contributor, Dr. Kavita Patel is here. The four of you could and are changing the world. It's an honor to have all of you here with us. I mean, Dahlia, help me sift through what this is, what we think happened.
I mean, I think that this, unlike the Dobbs leak, was probably a kind of a technical screw-up that happened. Somebody uploaded an opinion that was clearly not ready by its appearance to be sort of released today, and somebody uploaded it onto the court website, and the good people at Bloomberg Law said, hey, we see it, because all of us are busy going refresh, refresh, refresh to see what else is coming. And so we've got a draft opinion, but I think this is more in the bucket of if the Supreme Court behaved like an ordinary, transparent institution, embarrassing things like this wouldn't happen, and if they happen, they get corrected quickly. Then in the bucket of the catastrophic Dobbs leak, it's still very embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem with an institution whose public approval is plunging farther and faster than any other institution in civic life is the inability to own a mistake. I mean, why not? I mean, and if it's ready, why not release it today, Dahlia?
I mean, it is hard not to think that if it was ready, it should be released today. We're always told that there's no partisan valence or political valence to when cases come down. We're told, in fact, we're scolded that it's all just, they come down when they're ready. So this certainly suggests either that someone is still drafting something, in which case it wasn't ready, or that, the court is a little bit more political in its release of cases than any of us thought. But we're not going to know. And again, the fact that the court just sort of turned out the lights at 11 o'clock and said, we'll figure it out tomorrow, really, I think, speaks to this, again, imperial view of itself as beyond reproach. I'm sure we're minutes away from hearing that it's the press's fault again.
Predictable, but depressing and certainly not helpful to the court. Let's deal with the document that was posted. Today's document has this from Samuel Alito in a dissent, obviously. The right to refuse medical treatment without consent does not entail the right to demand treatment that is prohibited by law. Cancer patients have the right to refuse treatment that their doctors recommend, but they do not have a right to obtain whatever treatment they want, such as the administration of a drug that cannot legally be used in the country, granting terminal patients the right to try experimental drugs. Likewise here, a woman's right to withhold consent to treatment related to her pregnancy does not mean that she can demand an abortion. I mean, Dr. Patel, there is still this delusion that women are out there demanding abortions, like they demand, Spanx undergarments or Manolo Blahniks. It's a view, obviously, seemingly shared in the household. It's wrapped in the disinformation that's been peddled by the extreme wing of the pro-life movement for decades. It's incredibly out of step with American public opinion, and it's incredibly out of step with anything that happens inside a doctor's office between a patient and a doctor. Tell me what you think of what we're seeing in this document. We, again, don't know if this is the final opinion.
Yeah, Nicolle, what might be easier is to actually tell people what's happening on the ground. So a pregnant patient might come to the emergency room or their doctor's office for a variety of reasons: high blood pressure, bleeding, or one of the most common things in the emergency room. It happened 54 times at St. Luke's Boise, Idaho Hospital last year is that a patient's water breaks before a fetus can live outside of the womb, around or before 20 to 22 weeks of gestation. After the water breaks, there's usually a fetal heartbeat, but you can have infection quickly spread. You and I have talked about sepsis, which is life-threatening. Without a ban in place, what normally would happen is the doctor would likely recommend termination of the pregnancy to avoid sepsis and the death or potential death of the mother and the fetus. With this ban, what is happening today is that specialists are having to make a judgment call, having to think about talking to the administration, and in many cases, having to send a patient out of state. Keep in mind, the nearest place they can send them to is Portland or Seattle, and that's about 8 hours away, that can freely offer medical care. We're not talking about offering abortions on demand. We're talking about medical care. So those comments by Justice Alito, and it just makes my blood boil, because we're not talking about on-demand health care. Making that analogy to cancer is disrespectful to cancer patients and to people. And what we're really talking about is just access to care. And that's why I think you saw that outrage in Justice Jackson's statement, which is only the tip of the iceberg of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, Minnie, let me read more from, again, this document. In this document, this is from Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who wrote a concurring and a dissenting opinion. Quote, "We cannot simply wind back the clock to how things were before the court injected itself into this matter. Our intervention has already distorted this litigation process. We permitted Idaho's law to go into effect by staying the district court's injunction in the first place, then allowed this matter to sit on our merits docket for 5 months while we considered the question presented. It is too little, too late for the court to take a mulligan and just tell the lower courts to carry on as if none of this has happened. As the old adage goes, the court has made this bed, so now it must lie in it." Wow.
Could not agree with her more. I mean, look, the court had a chance to do the right thing here. The court had a chance to resolve this. This case was all about preemption. The Biden administration really trying to figure out, how do we save women's lives in states with abortion bans? How do we provide and make sure they have the critical care, life-saving care they need in the cases that Dr. Patel just outlined? The court could have done something about it. Instead, it's completely unconscionable that they've punted this. It is, in some ways, probably a better outcome than what many of us expected from this court, but it is a short-term win. Ultimately, what we need to see happen is abortion bans lifted. The Biden administration is doing everything they can in the margins to protect women's lives, but it is just simply not enough. This court is not to be trusted. We have to win a federal trifecta to reestablish a federal right to abortion. It is the only solution. It is dangerous to have to continue to go to this court. And this court has not shown, the majority of this court, any willingness to do the right thing. This is so similar to the medication abortion situation as well, where they just dismissed the case on standing. But Justice Kavanaugh laid out how to challenge medication abortion the next time. They are just not willing to make the hard decisions after the devastation that they created in overturning Roe.
Yeah, I mean, Melissa, it's well, two things. Mike Pence's fly has joined me down in the studio, but much more importantly, I mean, there's a what may end up being the only presidential debate tomorrow night. The public is more acutely aware, the general public, of the role of the Supreme Court in impacting the life of every American woman than it ever has been. And you have this decision, this document posted. I won't call it a decision because we don't know for sure that it is that. What do you make first of what it tells us about the competence of a rollout of a vital decision around an issue that has the attention and the interest and, frankly, the lives of women and their pregnancies and their unborn children on the line?
So, Nicolle, I agree with Dahlia that this may very well have just been a mistake, like an inadvertent uploading. But I want to step back and maybe offer a hot take that perhaps this court really does recognize what it unleashed in 2022 with Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overruled Roe versus Wade. After that decision was released in June 2022, we saw millions of American women going to the polls in the midterm elections with the death of Roe on their lips. And we saw over and over and over again that abortion could be a salient issue in electoral politics. I don't think that was lost on the court. In her concurrence/dissent, Justice Jackson noted this court decided to leapfrog over the Ninth Circuit, the lower intermediate appellate court that should have taken up this preliminary injunction, and instead inserted itself in it. So that means that there are at least 4 people on this court hot to trot to take this question of whether emergency abortions could be provided over the objections of the state. And now it seems, as we head into the election season, November is looming. Maybe this court has had a change of heart. We've seen it before. In Dobbs, the Chief Justice had tried valiantly to broker some kind of compromise that would uphold the Mississippi law while stopping short of overruling Roe, likely because he understood the political fallout from overruling that decision. Now it seems, with the election looming and abortion being a salient issue for progressives, maybe this court, in both the mifepristone case and in this case, realizes that maybe a decision right now isn't the best thing. It puts the court right in the crosshairs of politics where it does not want to be at a time when everyone is talking about the court and the problems with this court and its justices.
I mean, Melissa, let me press further on this. You've opened the door. I'm going to barrel through it. I mean, if the court is paying attention to politics and their public comments seem to suggest that they're glued to television programs like this one and politics, the problem isn't with progressives. Their problem is with Republicans living in places like Kansas and North Carolina. And what you're suggesting is, at best, extreme politicization of the schedule and the decision-making of the court. At worst, political corruption. Say more.
So again, rank speculation on my part, but the fact that the court did this case, said that cert was improvidently granted, that happens so infrequently at this court. I mean, for the court to say, you know what, we decided that some of these issues were just not well formulated by when we took, like in the fullness of time, we've seen that these decisions were not well formulated. We want to dig it and send it back to the lower court. That was nothing has changed. And Justice Jackson said as much in her concurrence and dissent. Nothing is different. The same conflict between the federal law and that draconian state law continues to exist. Women continue to be airlifted out of Idaho. Nothing has changed. The Justice Jackson or Justice Barrett in her concurrence suggested that during oral argument, both litigants changed their positions and narrowed their positions substantially. That really wasn't an issue. And in terms of the facts of this case, they were merely clarifying their positions at oral argument. That could have been done at the lower court, certainly, but it also could have happened at the Supreme Court. They're in a position to issue a decision. The question is, why don't they want to issue this decision now? And rank speculation on my part, but again, when you put this in conversation with the mifepristone decision, where that case should never have gotten to the court in the first place, they decided they would dismiss it on standing grounds, they can still come back to it. So they get the opportunity just before this election to appear moderate on the question of abortion, to not send women throughout the country to the polls with abortion on their minds. And in a year, 2 years, they get to come right back to this question. As Justice Jackson noted in her concurrence/dissent, there is a Fifth Circuit case that's already teed up on the very same question. There's an opportunity to come back here.
Well, I mean, this is a lot more than rank speculation, Minnie, from someone as brilliant as Melissa and all of you. Let me go back with that framing in mind to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's concurrence/dissent. Quote, as the adage goes, the court has made its bed, so now it must lie in it. She seems to be speaking directly to this dynamic. Your thoughts about the conversation that ensues in the next 5 months in the context of a campaign?
So it's important to note that again, it was the Biden HHS that put out this EMTALA guidance. A Trump HHS will rescind it. So if the court's kicking the can down the road, the way Professor Murray outlined, and I agree with her assessment, they're potentially leaving room for a Trump presidency, a Trump administration to finish the job of eliminating EMTALA, right? That same thing with medication abortion, right? A Trump-appointed FDA, a Trump FDA could rescind authorization for medication abortion, which was the whole point of the case. So when the Supreme Court circumvents making decisions here and does this stuff on technicality, they're opening the door for many of their cronies at the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 to do exactly what they've said in print that they would do, which is undermine abortion care even further than they already have with overturning Roe. So if I'm Joe Biden, tomorrow night in the debate, I'm talking about how my administration took these steps to protect medication abortion, took this step to protect emergency care for women in states with bans, and how I want to put an end to this devastation and this essentially segregated society we're in now. If I'm in a blue state, I have abortion access and I have freedom. And if I'm in a red state, I do not. By codifying a federal right to abortion, he's made it the front centerpiece of his campaign. He's having these women on the road telling their stories about their own lack of emergency care. And he's made this really personal for so many Americans. And that should be the focus for the next few months on this campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I need to come back to all of you on this idea that the court may be trying to market itself as more moderate than it really is, as a putting the toothpaste back in the tube effort. That's extraordinary. We have to sneak in a break before we have that conversation. No one's going anywhere. Still to come for us. Trump's allies already testing a new strategy to try and block the election results of the next presidential election. It's happening in counties in 5 battleground states. Fears are growing that it is a test run for trying to overturn another Biden victory in the fall. And later in the broadcast, on the eve of the first and possibly only presidential debate of the 2024 general election, an unlikely endorsement for President Joe Biden. Conservative former Congressman Adam Kinzinger says there's too much at stake to be sitting on the sidelines in November. Could Adam Kinzinger be just the start of a new wave of Republican endorsements? All those stories and more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere today.
However you may choose to travel, we'll keep you moving forward. Enterprise for lives in drive.
This is Rochelle, who gives you a shot. Rebecca is there when you feel not so hot. This is Larissa, who's feeling blown up. And this here is Winnie, who zhuzhed up their cup. This is Victoria, helping women stay healthy. These are your kids, snacking snacks made with veggies. And Maddie can help you find your new favorite color. And Kyle helps find meds for under $10. Whoever you are, wherever, whenever. At CVS, healthier happens together.
You've earned this, so hold it up high. It's your job to stock the city, restaurants and rooftops, bars and basements. Every corner store. And when it gets tough, you stay driven. Give it all you got, going nonstop for 20 stops. Because at the end of the day, every single round is on you. You are a fighter, and this is your reward. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
It's the best time to visit More Furniture. Join us for our July 4th truckload event. You'll find truckloads of our top-tier product at factory direct prices, in stock and available for immediate delivery. Right now, get a beautiful, high-quality leather sofa with reclining headrest, lumbar support, and seat at our lowest prices. Get this triple reclining leather sofa in bold gray leather or in warm, supple brown leather. Your choice, only $16.95. Pair it with a matching leather love seat, including 2 cup holders for only $29.95, only while supplies last.
One way to avoid expensive car repair bills is to be a race car driver. The other is Endurance.
Endurance saved me more than $7,000.
Without Endurance, breakdowns can cost thousands. With Endurance, you're covered.
Endurance covers nearly every car on the road. Plus,
you pick the mechanic you trust.
Act now for $300 off any plan, plus a year of elite benefits and a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Call 1-877-204-1084.
Now.
Oh, we're in luck. The disorientated work-from-home professional emerges from hibernation. But that's no match for her bronzing drops. She hasn't seen the sun in 5 days.
Ugh, rude. It's only been 4 days.
Before the Olympics,
France warms up with its signature race. 3 weeks of speed.
Oh my goodness.
Sacrifice and splendor. The Tour de France on Peacock.
More Americans turn to NBC News than any other news organization.
This is a story about getting away with treachery and coming back stronger.
These people don't disappear, they just go underground.
Rachel Maddow presents Ultra, Season 2 of the chart-topping original podcast. Listen now.
You said this court is not normal. What did you mean?
What I meant with that is it's done more to unravel basic rights and basic decisions than any court in recent history. And that's what I meant by not normal. It's gone out of its way to, I mean, for example, take a look at overruling Roe v. Wade. Take a look at what the decision today. Take a look at how it's ruled on a number of issues that have been precedent for 50, 60 years sometimes. And that's what I meant by not normal.
Okay. We're back with Dahlia, Minnie, Melissa, and Dr. Patel. Dahlia, again, I don't have any visibility into the Biden campaign or candidacy other than what is public. But if you look at how underappreciated Dobbs was ahead of the last time Americans went to the polls, and that was a midterm, right? That was 2022, and how off the polls were from what ended up happening. This isn't an issue that has to be really explained to people. This court, the way it conducts itself on ethics or the lack thereof, the way it appears incompetent posting a document, and it may have been technical, but a campaign or a network or a show doesn't get that kind of benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It's certainly a wild, we have to believe in a lot of coincidences to believe that happened twice with abortion cases, but okay. This is something that people intuit. If you have a uterus, you know exactly what it means if abortion is illegal. I think there's a hidden male vote that understands the consequences of women's health care being a crime. Just talk about what President Biden said there, and if he makes this a pillar of the 2024 general election, that this court is not normal, what that means for the court.
I mean, there's been such interesting polling, right, suggesting that big swaths of the country still somehow think that Biden is responsible for the fall of Roe. And that's kind of chilling because, of course, every time Donald Trump can get in front of a microphone, if he's not talking about Hannibal Lecter, he's talking about the ways that his justices ended Roe v. Wade. And yet I think it points to still a kind of failure to connect the election of a president with Supreme Court justices and then the results that come out in the doctrine. And I think one of the things we're going to see now, and we're starting to see it, I think, this summer, is the Biden administration trying to kind of connect those two thoughts up and say, not just Donald Trump single-handedly responsible for the overturn of Roe and all the misery that we've been seeing, you know, Amanda Zorowski and Kate Cox. And, you know, let's be really clear, this opinion today, assuming it's the opinion, it only attaches to Idaho, right? There's still the Fifth Circuit. There's still people who cannot get abortion care unless their life is in danger. So that doesn't affect nobody. Lots and lots of people are still, as Minnie said, unable to access care. I think this argument that if you do not elect Joe Biden, you are going to see one, maybe two more Sam Alitos, more Clarence Thomas is appointed to the court, is an argument that Biden really needs to make in the most fulsome way. And it's really, I think, something that, as Melissa says, is so deeply salient to voters. We've seen that in state after state that's put abortion on the ballot post-Dobbs. But I think that the kind of connective tissue hasn't always been there. And that's going to be the challenge, not just in the debate tomorrow, but going into the summer and the election season.
It's such a good point. I mean, Dr. Patel, we constantly ask where the generals are. I'll show you what Trump has to say about this and ask you where more of your colleagues are, more physicians. Let me show you this first.
I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade. I did something that nobody thought was possible. I got rid of Roe v. Wade. And by doing that, it put pro-lifers in a very strong negotiating position. For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it. And I'm proud to have done it. Nobody else was going to get that done but me. Yeah. And we did it. And we did something that was a miracle.
It's not a miracle. It's so wildly unpopular that Republicans in Kansas have rejected the bans. It's a political liability. It's a liability for women's health. And I wonder what you think and what conversations you're aware of are happening on the sort of medical side of the conversation, people who see this and live this, to make sure that what Dahlia explained doesn't happen, that people understand the guy bragging about ending Roe v. Wade is, for once, telling the truth. He's the one who ended Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, it's ironic that you do have him just kind of telling the truth so plainly, but people not realizing or misattributing that to President Biden. I can tell you that what's happening right now is we're dismantling the healthcare system. We have been dismantling it, and we're creating not just these deserts for maternal care, Nicolle, we're creating deserts for care, because when you have what we're seeing statistically with OBGYNs leaving states and places like Idaho and many other states across the country, that means that we're also not training emergency room doctors, OBGYNs, critical care specialists to understand and recognize what I just laid out that even I had to deal with. I had to go to the ER and wonder, all right, is my pregnancy at threat? Do I have something happening? And I depended on all of the people around me having that expertise. So we are dismantling the healthcare system. And this is so ironic after colleagues of mine and myself worked on the Affordable Care Act, where we still have the Republicans talking about taking down the ACA or getting rid of Obamacare, and then also taking pride in exactly what it is nothing short of taking apart the healthcare system. Anybody who doesn't believe that needs to not just go to some of the states like Idaho, go to anywhere in the country when you watch the pattern that's changed amongst doctors, nurses, and allied health practitioners.
You know, Melissa, there's a thing with being female in America that is so dystopian, right? It doesn't seem real that a guy who bragged about grabbing women between the legs won, that talked about Megyn Kelly bleeding from her eyes and I don't know where, I think was the quote. And there's been this sort of surreal element to where the Trump MAGA movement places women in society. I wonder if you think abortion and Dobbs in these conversations is sort of a circuit breaker moment for the country and for women in this country.
It's obviously not a circuit breaker for all women, but we've seen in Kansas certainly that at the very least for many women, the idea of the government making these decisions about your health and your health care really is a deal breaker for many women. And again, I think it's really important that, we not lose sight of the fact that abortion is healthcare, but there are women like Kate Cox and Amanda Zarowski who are being threatened with the loss of their lives, the loss of their fertility, because their doctors don't know where their medical judgment begins and where the law ends. And that kind of chaos is exactly what these bans hope to sow. That's as effective a deterrent to abortion as anything else. You asked earlier, what's in it here for the court? Is the court on some major PR campaign to sort of present itself as moderate and consensus driven? Well, I think we've definitely seen that over the course of this term, even as we peter out to the end. There have been a number of so-called unanimous decisions, but then we have lots of separate concurrences and dissents. So they're having a hard time getting to unanimity or even close to unanimity, even when they are ostensibly unanimous. We've also seen, for example, that they've taken a lot of cases from the Fifth Circuit, and they've often turned back from the most extreme positions that the Fifth Circuit has articulated. That's a PR move, too. The Fifth Circuit essentially exists right now to be a PR arm for this court. The Fifth Circuit is extreme and out there, and when the court reverses the Fifth Circuit, it gets the opportunity to look moderate, even as it's still moving to the right. It's just not moving as far to the right as the Fifth Circuit is. And then finally, let me just say this for the listeners. We have not talked at all since this opinion was inadvertently uploaded about the opinion everyone really wants to know about, and that's the Trump immunity case. And I don't know if that's part of what's going on here, but it cannot be discounted that everyone is focused on this decision on EMTALA and will likely be for the next 2 days. And we're not talking about the decision that it shouldn't have taken the court 2 months to decide.
Well, it also brings us back to the very real possibility that they're sitting on that too, and that the person who clicked upload could have just as easily have uploaded the immunity decision. I mean, I think many, I'm going to ask you a question that I think I might know the answer to. I mean, it's all one conversation, and very successful candidates like Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro in 2022 refused to allow the right, in a shallow PR move or not, to disaggregate democracy from abortion. Talk about how imperative that is ahead of the 2024 election.
It's so critical. You know, I've been actually traveling with my colleagues from the democracy and voting rights movement, raising this issue on the ground in critical battleground states. Right now I'm in Arizona, and I want to sort of just give a ray of hope. I was meeting with my organizers and canvassers who are knocking some pretty tough turf in the Phoenix suburbs, you know, talking to Latino Catholic voters about abortion. We've got a ballot initiative here. We've got tough Senate race, tough congressional races here. Abortion is very much at the top of mind for Arizona voters. And they're able to, through deep canvassing and tough conversations with voters, move folks who might say, I'm pro-life, to our side on these issues by connecting the dots between democracy, the erosion of our, confidence in democracy, our voting norms, and the courts, by talking about Dobbs and talking about Roe and talking about the fundamental freedoms. You know, they're hearing back at the doors, I might have conflict around how I feel about abortion, but I do believe in fundamental freedom. And I want my family to have the freedom to decide. And they understand the connectivity between those freedoms and the courts. So it takes a little extra work. Canvassing and organizing good old-fashioned shoe leather, it's tough, but it's a path to victory. And I believe that that's the kind of investment we're going to need to win back our freedoms this November, and we're on the path.
I am fascinated by what you're all saying, and especially what you're saying, Melissa, about the PR-minded moves. Let's continue that conversation. You've all made me smarter. My brain hurts a little bit, I'll admit. Dahlia Lithwick, Mini Timuraju, Melissa Murray, and Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you so much for spending time with us and starting us off today. When we come back, it's being called a dry run for another coup attempt. How allies of the disgraced ex-president are testing the waters, trying to overturn election results in battleground states now in preparation to do the very same thing in November. We'll bring you that story after a very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Ariana Maddox, will you host Peacock's Love Island USA? Yes!
A hot new bombshell is headed to the villa, where new islanders are sure to make waves.
Who's ready to couple up?
Love Island USA, streaming now.
What if you could face every day with confidence? Raid puts 65 years of insect science in your hands, so you can protect the ones you love. Raid. Protection for everyone. S.C. Johnson.
If you have heart disease and struggle with LDL-C,
even with statins and a healthy diet,
listen to your heart.
Talk to your doctor about Repatha.
Repatha plus a statin lowers LDL-C bad cholesterol by 63% and drops the risk of having a heart attack. Do not take Repatha if you are allergic to it. Repatha can cause serious allergic reactions. Signs include trouble breathing or swallowing or swelling of the face. Most common side effects include runny nose, sore throat, common cold symptoms, flu or flu-like symptoms, back pain, high blood sugar, and redness, pain, or bruising at the injection site. Talk to your doctor about Repatha.
Let's explore your future with Udemy. You can learn how to program and build websites, study design and create logos, improve your presentation skills, and sell your ideas. With Udemy, you can learn practical skills from thousands of online courses taught by real-world experts. Explore your future. Udemy.
All the parts you need at the prices you want. Guaranteed to fit every time. So you can keep your ride or die alive.
People said I was crazy to do this. Just a surf coach who wanted to shake up the sunglass industry. I wanted something different, radical and fun. I didn't want to blend in, so I created Blenders. Born on the beach in San Diego, now rocked with pride worldwide. We're bright, we're bold, at a price that everyone can afford. Don't blend in. Welcome to your new favorite shades.
Transform your water and live hydrated.
Yeah.
Care, pour, live more with Liquid IV.
Tamara, Izzy, and Emma. No one puts more love into logistics than these three. You need them. They need a retirement plan. Work with principals so we can help you with a plan that's right for your team. Let our expertise round out yours.
Numbers. They never lie. You can add them, subtract them, multiply, or divide them, and they tell it like it is, whether you like it or not. Because numbers don't have opinions. They don't lean politically to the left or to the right. They might seem dry, but they tell very human stories. Stories about the candidates, about the voters, about the country. In the end, numbers tell stories that words alone can't. And when you look at the world through numbers, somehow it all adds up.
Why would Americans assume that our Constitution and our institutions in our republic are invulnerable to another attack? A key lesson of this investigation is this: our institutions only hold when men and women of good faith make them hold, regardless of the political cost. We have no guarantee that these men and women will be in place next time. Any future president inclined to attempt what Donald Trump did in 2020 has now learned not to install people who could stand in the way.
That was former Congresswoman and January 6th Select Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney sounding the alarm about the all too dangerous lessons that the disgraced ex-president and his allies learned from their first failed attempt to steal an election. Now, brand new reporting in the Washington Post has uncovered a widespread effort by GOP officials to block certification of election results in key battleground states. Post writes this, quote, since 2020, county-level election officials in 5 key battleground states, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, have tried to block the certification of vote tallies in both primaries and general elections. While so far these efforts have failed, they could upend the next election. Quote, voting rights advocates believe that unsubstantiated claims of fraud by Trump and his allies are sowing even deeper mistrust in the fall election results than they did 4 years ago, raising the potential for unrest and even violence on a greater scale, too. And as Liz Cheney warns, many of the people who stopped Trump in 2020 are no longer there. They've been replaced with true believers of Donald Trump and the big lie. Joining us now, voting rights attorney, the founder of the site Democracy Docket, Mark Elias. Mark, we've had a lot of conversations just this week about, one, this sort of lull in the chatter around domestic violent extremism tied to the big lie. We've dug into what's being peddled to Trump supporters on Fox News, and it's this certainty that Trump will win, and if he doesn't, it's fraud. That feels like an even deeper and more dangerous line than what they towed in 2020, which was more, we think we're going to win. If we don't, we'll go look and manufacture fraud. How do you feel about the tracks that are being laid by Trump?
I am very, very worried. The fact is that after the violent insurrection on January 6th, Republicans had a choice. They could either back away from the brink, they could distance themselves from Donald Trump and his lies, they could tell the truth, which was that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election fair and square, or they could do what they eventually did, which is to double down on the lies, which is to say with more certainty that Donald Trump won 2020 when he didn't, and to insist that there is some broad deep state conspiracy, whatever that means, to deny Donald Trump the election again in 2024. And so this has been building slowly. You know, the Washington Post talks about the attacks on certification. Let's remember, it was Ronna McDaniel and Donald Trump who got on the phone with the 2 Republican members of the Wayne County Canvassing Board in 2020 to try to convince them not to certify the election results. When that failed, the Republicans tried to get the Republican members of the statewide Canvassing Board not to certify. That almost succeeded, but it failed. In 2022, Cochise County, Arizona, refused to certify the election results. My law firm and I, we sued them to force them to certify. Those election officials have now been indicted by the state. In Pennsylvania, three counties refused to certify in the primary election. 1 county, Luzerne County, refused to certify in the general election. We sued them and forced them to certify. This has been building over and over again. Building up and up, rather. But it's much more dangerous for 2024 because the true believers, as you point out, are now more firmly in control of these offices.
I mean, I have to sneak in a break, but I want to ask you about the impact. I mean, people talk about the deterrent effect of the Justice Department prosecutions of the foot soldiers of January 6th, which I always think is ludicrous because the commander of January 6th is just sitting fat and happy at Mar-a-Lago, literally. But you've got the spouses of 2 Supreme Court justices who were enthusiasts of the insurrection and their symbols. So I don't know how many hundreds of prosecutions you need to override the fact that 2 of the 9 households of the most powerful justices in our country are down with the insurrection's iconography and mission. I want to have that conversation. I have to sneak in a quick break. Please stay with us, Mark Elias.
You don't have to wait to save at More Furniture. Our 4th of July sale is on now. You're invited to beat the crowds for summer savings and incredible values for every room in your home. Get ready for summer entertaining, family gatherings, and much more, all at our lowest prices. At More Furniture, value meets style every day. And with additional sale pricing store-wide, our prices are unbeatable. Visit your local showroom or preview all 4th of July sales specials online at morefurniture.com.
Want the effects of Viagra, but faster? Meet Rose Sparks. They contain sildenafil and tadalafil, the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis. But Sparks dissolve under the tongue. Dissolvables work faster than old school pills. Plus, tadalafil, the active ingredient in Cialis, stays in your system for long-lasting results. We got you. Connect with a medical provider at ro.co/sparks.
I feel like I lose track of at least $500 a month.
Yeah, maybe that's because you still use spreadsheets. Haven't you heard of Rocket Money?
No, but you're probably gonna cut me off and tell me about it.
It's an app that automatically tracks your spending in real time, lowers your bills, and finds and cancels sneaky subscriptions.
Okay, I'm listening, but how does that help me with my $500?
Easy answer. The app can also help you make a budget that works for your income, and anytime you get close to your spending limits, which it sounds like you do regularly, it alerts you.
Sign me up.
Start the new year off right and download Rocket Money today.
Okay, guys, ceremony starts in 5.
One sec, just got a hymns real quick. Hymns? Yeah, hymns. Hymn 2.
Hymns for ED. Always works for me.
I'm hymnsing right now. So simple, so convenient. Hymns.
Weight loss by hymns, boys. You got to get on it, son.
For care that's doctor trusted, convenient, and personalized, get started today at hims.com.
I've always been prone to hair thinning.
I'm genetically predisposed.
I just gave birth. I was under a lot of stress.
I started taking Nutrafol.
We test our formulations with the highest rigor of clinical trials, and we're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement.
I noticed it becoming
stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has taken me back to the hair I was meant to have.
I am back to me.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
Have you heard? Soda's not a dirty word anymore. Introducing Poppy, the best thing to happen to lemon lime since, well, lemons and limes. It's the iconic, refreshing flavor you crave, but with 3 grams of sugar. Real lemon, real lime, real juicy flavor. The future of soda is now, and it's called Poppy. Poppy, soda's back.
Get pumped! Chevron rewards are here. Download the Chevron app and join for $1 off per gallon on your next 3 visits. Then earn points on fuel and select in-store purchases to be redeemed for rewards on fuel. Terms and conditions apply. See ChevronTexacoRewards.com for details.
Tomorrow,
The first presidential debate, hosted by CNN. Rachel Maddow and team will preview the rematch. Then stay tuned for the full debate, followed by insights and perspective. Special coverage and analysis begins tomorrow at 7 on MSNBC.
It's hard for me to understand why the court even took this case. I'm worried when Justice Kavanaugh says things like, we have to write for the ages. No, you don't. You need to decide the case just in front of you on the basis of the facts and the law that has been presented to you. And if you do that, you'll reach the same conclusion as the appellate court, that a president needs to be held accountable in the same way that any other American would be. Any result other than that is I think, both absurd and extremely, extremely dangerous.
We're back with Mark Elias, former Attorney General Eric Holder there. Obviously, Mark, talking about the immunity case. But I, we talk a lot with Sarah Longwell, who's running this Republican Voters Against Trump effort about permission structures. And I wonder what sort of symbolically and by association the permission structure of the Supreme Court itself and the spouses of two of the justices create around the kinds of things you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm very worried about it because the fact is that people who engage in election denialism, they don't come to this naturally. They come to it because they are first told lies and they are sold that these lies are true. But then they have to look at the elites in their party, in their movement, and for validation. And certainly there's no bigger validator of the lies than Donald Trump. Let's be clear, that responsibility sort of begins and ends with him. But they also look at the validation being given to them by other elites. What are Republican Party leaders doing? What are Republican senators and House members doing? But when it comes to legal matters, when it comes to whether you are breaking the law or not, there is no more prominent validator than the U.S. Supreme Court. And we have seen the court undermine its legitimacy in so many ways. But one of the ways, unfortunately, it's building up its legitimacy is on this very far right wing that wants to engage in election denialism. So, the very fact that, as Attorney General Holder said, they took the immunity case was a validation point for them. The fact that they engaged in what seemed to be a good faith debate about whether or not Donald Trump, if he was president, could assassinate his political opponents, I think we have not heard the last of. And I fear that that was a form of validation. Obviously, what we saw with the flag flying, the upside down flag flying, which, used to be something that was viewed as an extraordinary sign of distress, that was sort of out of bounds, but which has now been legitimized. And I would put one more thing on the table, Nicolle, as you and the viewers watch the next couple of days. There's a lot of focus on the Trump immunity case, but there's another case that they're going to have to decide, which is the Fisher case. And this is whether or not a provision in federal law prohibited the unlawful action in the nation's capital. And if the Supreme Court reverses the application of that statute to January 6th, that is going to be a very, very powerful validator for people who want to believe that the January 6th criminals were somehow framed.
Mark, what are you listening for in tomorrow night's debate on the issue of the Supreme Court and democracy from President Joe Biden?
Look, I think those are two different topics. They're connected, but I think that they're two different topics. The president speaks as eloquently as anyone on the question of democracy. He's been full-throated in his admonitions to the American people, the importance of accepting election results, and in laying out the case against Donald Trump as a threat to democracy. I think he is less comfortable. He's an institutionalist. I think he is less comfortable intuitively talking about the Supreme Court, as many lawyers are, as many people who have been around Washington, D.C. are. But I think it's important that he continue to ratchet up the rhetoric, which he has, and really call out the Supreme Court for what it's doing, which is really undermining confidence in our democracy and issuing rulings that have really negative consequences for individual freedom and for rule of law.
And then there's the small stuff, too. I mean, they can't seem to run their IT department, and they're nowhere AWOL on ethics. Mark Elias, as always, thank you very much for spending time with us and being part of all of our coverage. It's great to see you. Up next for us, Trump has always bragged about the power of his political endorsement. It turns out he may not actually have much reason to brag about it anymore. We'll show you that next.
We've never spoken, but you've told us many things. You told us you love stargazing, almost as much as you hate parallel parking. That heavy right foot of yours? We got you. The Lexus ES didn't begin in a studio, it began with you.
Get special offers on select Lexus models.
Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Things started off great, but once the new wore off,
They changed.
in the beginning, I got gifts like a phone.
And then next thing you know, it's like I'm invisible.
So I switched up and got me a new phone carrier.
Don't put up with wireless yada yada. Now with Metro, get that new customer feeling again and again. Introducing Metro Flex. Free 5G phones when you join, same deals as new customers when you stay. Only at Metro.
Did you know calcium in water amplifies hair damage, making it more prone to breakage? New Premiere by Kerastase. Dual action repair hair care with citric acid and glycerin. First, it frees hair from calcium buildup. Second, it reconnects broken links between keratin chains, restoring up to 99% of hair's original strength. Discover hair at its premier state. New Premiere by Kerastase.
Realtor.com is the #1 app real estate professionals trust. So when you're buying or selling a home, Realtor.com's Real Estimate gives you 3 independent valuations, so you know what a home is really worth. Real Choice Selling lets you choose from multiple agent proposals, because when agents compete, you win. And RealView Maps show you precise wildfire, flood, and noise ratings on every home listing.
Don't all apps do that?
Not really. Trust the #1 app real estate professionals trust.
Intra-party wars over the last 2 years, all of it resulting in an indication, as Politico reports, that, quote, there is a limit to Trump's sway and political operation, that, quote, Trump's endorsement is powerful, but it is not all powerful. Coming up for us in the next hour of Deadline White House, President Joe Biden builds a bipartisan coalition for democracy. The conservative critic of Donald Trump crosses the aisle and endorses President Joe Biden. We'll bring you that story. We'll show it to you after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Happy accidents, serendipity, other words that mean that. It's one of the things that makes Pinterest, Pinterest, where that thing that you were looking for leads you to that other thing you didn't even know you were looking for, which then leads to some other completely different thing, and all of a sudden you realize you were an old money baddie goth goblin core girly girl all along.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've created a brand new way for you to sell your car. Whether it's a year old or a few years old, we want to buy your car. So go to Carvana, enter your license plate, answer a few questions, and our techno wizardry calculates your car's value and gives you a real offer in seconds. When you're ready, we'll come to you, pay you on the spot, and pick up your car. That's it. So ditch the old way of selling your car and say hello to the new way at Carvana.
Unless you've been living under a rock, and perhaps you have, I don't know your life, you'd know that elf skin bronzing drops have dropped. But access to these newfound drops has created some peculiar behavior amongst Homo sapiens. After it appears her own supply has run dry, the brave hunter begins her mission, and it is surely a perilous one. Grab your popcorn. This just got exciting. We're in luck. The disorientated work-from-home professional emerges from hibernation, but that's no match for her bronzing drops. She hasn't seen the sun in 5 days.
Rude, it's only been 4 days.
This single bottle can enhance the natural glow and vitality of all Homo sapiens. No! Drop inside!
Lemonade. Changing insurance, starting with everything.
Thank you for waiting. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for... Please hold.
Get insurance that works faster.
Thank you for...
Insure your stuff with Lemonade Renters Insurance today.
Macy's 4th of July fireworks. Live, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
More Americans turn to NBC News than any other news organization.
Your vote will live after you. It will live in the Supreme Court. Your vote will decide what century we live in. Will we live in an age of legal and constitutional enlightenment, or will we live in 1864? Your vote is not just about the next 4 years. Your vote is nothing less than an exercise in incredible intergenerational power that will live long after you.
I'm a proud conservative. I always have been. As a proud conservative, I've always put democracy and our Constitution above all else. And it's because of my unwavering support for democracy that today, as a proud conservative, I'm endorsing Joe Biden for re-election.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in the East. Words that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. A stalwart, self-described conservative, a one-time Tea Party darling, crossing the political aisle to protect our democracy, as he puts it. President Joe Biden heading into an historic debate tomorrow night against the man who sought to end democracy, with wins in his sails thanks to an endorsement from a member of the other political party. Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger telling voters that Donald Trump is just too dangerous to be sent back to the White House.
Donald Trump poses a direct threat to every fundamental American value. He doesn't care about our country. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself, and he'll hurt anyone or anything in pursuit of power. He attacked the foundation of this nation, encouraging a violent mob of his supporters to march on the Capitol to prevent the peaceful transition of power. Now he's become even more dangerous. He's called for termination of the Constitution. He wants to be a dictator on day one. He actually said that. And he's continuing to stoke the flames of political violence. Now's the time to unite behind Joe Biden and show Donald Trump off the stage once and for all.
President Joe Biden retweeting Adam Kinzinger's endorsement and saying this, quote, "This is what putting your country before your party looks like. I'm grateful for your endorsement, Adam." This full-throated repudiation of Donald Trump and enthusiastic endorsement of President Joe Biden comes from one of